There is no other way to do it. If somebody tells you that, oh, you can just torque it or you just use 6 ugga-duggas, you can probably get away with it, but you might end up with this. So don't try. I'm gonna talk about changing this pinion seal, which is the seal behind this pinion. Have a good night. That's what you get for being shitty. This is the input side of the differential. And it's very important to make sure that you index where your nut bolts onto the pinion shaft. So we wanna put a mark on the pinion and on the nut, and we're just gonna hit it. You can see the mark right here. And that's gonna be the exact location that we want to put this nut back on. And I'll explain to you why. You tighten this pinion nut when you're assembling a differential. You don't tighten it to a certain torque. You tighten it to torque to rotate. And you use this type of a torque wrench, which is, if you see, if I hold the socket, if I pull on it, it deflects and it shows me how much torque is being applied. We rotate this and we watch how much torque is being applied. That's called torque to rotate. Most differentials are gonna be about 30 inch-pounds. Not a lot, but it should feel pretty stiff to rotate. Now, if you take this nut off to change this pinion seal, you need to make sure it goes back in the same spot so that you have the same amount of load. I'll explain to you why once I take it apart. Let me get this pinion out. The important piece is this collar. This collar sits just like this. It sits right here between these two bearings. Now imagine there's a race and a race here. When you tighten this nut, it crushes it to bring those bearings closer together. The amount we bring these bearings close to each other will be determined by the amount of torque it takes to rotate these two bearings on the races. When we're measuring the torque to rotate with this torque wrench, we're rotating this assembly with the two bearings. And we're gonna keep tightening this nut until these bearings have enough friction between them to create about, let's say, 30 inch-pounds of force. So when you take this nut off and you take this pinion flange off, you change your seal, you put this back on, you need to bring that pinion flange back down to the bearing to the exact same location. If you don't bring it back enough, then these bearings will have play. They're not gonna have any preload. And if these don't have enough preload, these bearings are gonna flop around and it'll wear out quickly. If they have too much preload, then a lot of resistance to turn them and it won't want to move. And that'll also wear out the bearings. So you have to have just the right amount. And that amount is set by torque to rotate. Why can't I just put the nut back on and use my brand new handy dandy torque to rotate wrench to figure out what that torque is? When you set this bearing preload, you do it with an empty housing. None of this differential bearings or anything is inside the pumpkin at that point. You also have axles, brakes, wheels connected to this differential. So if you try to do the torque to rotate, you're gonna be spinning everything together with it. That doesn't work.